All right, here for our courtroom roundtable, the most anticipated day of the trial. We have two defense attorneys, Rhonda Peoples-Waters, as well as Randy Reep, and it's all about the defense here today. They finally got the case, and the most anticipated day because Corrine Brown herself took the stand, which kind of came as a surprise to a lot of folks. It's been 8 days of bruising testimony from the government when they presented their side, and then it was kind of wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Defense was up, and now they say they're going to end with Corrine Brown, and a lot of people wanted to hear what she had to say. What do you each think was the best thing that she said on the stand to try to help herself with this jury?
I think you saw Corrine Brown in her element as far as being endearing to the people that want to like her. They found a very easy opportunity to do that. She was light, she was jovial, she was friendly, she was spirited at times. If they were looking for a place to support her, they found it.
What about you, Rhonda?
Well, I like it. I think that this is a really big point when it goes to her intent to defraud. I like the information that we learned about Ronnie's sister. The fact that Corrine says, listen, she was sick, she needed some additional health care coverage. I thought that she was working. I had no idea that Ronnie was taking his sister's paycheck, which goes to the fact that, yes, he is big and bold enough to do things behind her back, which then leads to why he would be defrauding the government behind her back and not a conspiracy.
So I heard things that I felt like as a juror could help her and also hurt her. One thing she said is right off the bat, after she denied all the charges, one of the next things they moved into is her saying, I'm not good at fundraising, which that kind of, you know, fell a little flat in my opinion, only because you've had 8 days of donors getting up saying this is the woman that can pull in the big checks. This is what she's known for in Washington. But then she would come back at times and talk about, you know, hey, this golf tournament, I've only held one golf tournament ever. I had no idea how expensive these things were. As whenever we had an event, if it didn't make any money, we never had it again. And in her defense, there was one golf tournament, there was one Beyonce concert, and one Jaguars game. And even on the Jaguars game, she had the jury and the gallery laughing along with her, talking about, I'm a football fanatic, they're the home team, and there's still hope. So does that argument, you think, hold water with this jury without any hard facts and receipts and those details?
The argument that Corrine Brown wasn't a very good politician but was able to hold a seat for 2.5 decades? No. I don't think it does. I think she comes across as being rather disingenuous there, and that's the danger of submitting her to that exam and cross-exam potentially on that issue.
Opens up a vulnerability, you think there,
so,
for the government to come in?
Well, the point that I think she makes is that I wasn't good enough to raise the money to host the events and to give thousands more to scholarships and students. However, the government is going to counter with, well, if you all weren't using it for your personal funds and Ronnie wasn't taking, what, $60,000, $70,000, then you would have had money to give to scholarships. So it works both ways.
So she did seem a little overwhelmed. At times she was hard to kind of focus. Her attorney several different times had to keep saying, Congresswoman, we'll get to that in a minute. I need you to listen very closely at what I'm asking you. I need you to focus on this question. What does the jury make of that?
I do think that you can discern from that she is under quite a bit of stress. I mean, not to mention the fact that she has one of those personalities that's probably a little bit more boisterous. I mean, she's not that confined even just knowing what type of person she is. But can you imagine being under this stress and having listened to this testimony and listened to Ronnie's testimony yesterday and then going to the exact extreme of having to give your own testimony on the very next day? I do think that that was a mistake on the defense's part to do that so soon.
So do you agree with the strategy of a quick case? I mean, 6 hours, possibly over with?
Well, I shared with you on Monday that I thought this case would go a lot earlier than 11 days of testimony they thought, because the math is the math, and it's either going to bore people or get them. If you're going to be the defense, you're going to poke holes in the state's case. They got multiple counts they've got to do that on. I'd like a little bit more meat to it as well. I mean, but at the end of the day, the way they set up the opening, Corrine Brown was going to be the star of the show. She needed to win it or lose it, and it was hers to do.
Do you think they were trying to purposely put her the day after Ronnie Simmons' testimony so it was fresh on the jury's mind?
If you're going to do it, that's the only reason to do it. I'd like to see Ron and I were talking a little more time and a little more meat between that, and then Corrine Brown come in and end it. But the reality is they set an opening. You're going to either like Simmons or you're going to like Brown. You're going to believe one or the other. And bringing them very close together, that's the only reason I could think to do it. I don't like it.
The meat between it adds credibility to the defendant's testimony. That's what it is here. It's not that Corrine Brown's testimony is going to change in that time period, but what you're doing is you're building this foundation as to why you can believe what my client is saying, because we've had 6 students come up and tell you what they benefited from that China trip, which is completely contrasting the intent to defraud the government. And I think that that's important, and that's certainly missing.
So as a defense attorney, would you have handled the case the same?
Well, I think it's hard for us to put, ourselves in those shoes. We don't know what he had to deal with. We certainly know that Corrine Brown is just an unusual client. But I do think that details are super important, and those jurors would have liked to have had more details to maybe support whatever decision it is that they come to.
Let's talk about the unpredictability of a jury. I was sitting there in the gallery. I was in the overflow room. This one woman wanted to grab me at the beginning before Corrine Brown took the stand, and all she could tell me is all the way she thought she was guilty, and she was just excited to see a conviction. And then after 1 hour of testimony, they took their first break. She turns around to me and says, "Never mind, she didn't do it." I said, "You were just swearing up and down she did." And she said, "Well, I just needed to hear it from her. I could tell in her voice she didn't do it." Is it possible, after 8 days of this bruising, damaging testimony we've all been talking about, that our juror, without the meat and potatoes, without all these facts in between, could just hear Corrine Brown, like her, and vote not guilty?
The fascinating part of the group dynamic of a jury is probably brought out most in another high-profile case, Casey Anthony, right? That jurors will do what they want to do. I don't think anybody could argue that the defense is really working for a full acquittal on all charges right here. They're poking holes where they can. If they wanted to find a place to hang the jury on many of these issues, they probably have found an opportunity to do that with their testimony, but you have no idea what those 12 people are going to do. It's a fascinating process.
And it's important to make sure we explain, to the viewers that it only takes one juror to say, you know what, I have some doubt, it's reasonable, and therefore I cannot come to a decision as to a conviction. And then that means that the government has to start all over again. I mean, of course, the defense as well, but it's a bigger loss for the government to have to start over again.
And it's still a very possible scenario in this case when you have a polarizing figure and a polarizing defendant like the former Congresswoman.
Particularly as to all charges. I think you'll see some hung areas there.
All right, thank you both so much for your insight. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.